Podcaster Newsom unveils $101 million to build Palisades low-income housing. Oh, the conspiracy theories on this one, they are just going to take off. Let's get into them. Here we go. Now, what I'm going to start off with is we're going to go to taking a peek-see at a response that Podcaster Newsom's office had to this storyline coming out. And originally, they wanted a number of corrections. The corrections to me still didn't really impact the storyline. Storyline still stands. But let's read through the corrections first, because I'm not going to read you the old story and then the new story. New story's been corrected. This article, this is from, imagine gruesome Newsom, Podcaster Newsom stating this. This article is riddled with factual inaccuracies and misleading claims. It's why we've requested significant corrections. Let's start with the headline. Newsom unveils $101 million to build Palisades low-income housing. That's flatly wrong. Is it? Is it though? Is it really? Nah. This funding is not limited to the Palisades, so it doesn't really matter. They could have said Palisades and others. But you've only got so much space to do your headline with, right? It supports affordable housing in multiple wildfire impact communities, including Altadena. All right. Okay. Good. Yeah. I don't think that really impacts the story at all. It actually makes it worse because it's just more areas that are going to be receiving this type of funding for affordable housing. Even more egregious is the false claim that California state law and local law enforcement and ordinance require fire-destroyed rent-protected housing, which includes all apartments in the city built before October 1978, be replaced with low-income housing. This is simply not true. State law does not require rent-controlled units destroyed in the LA fires. Okay, and we're going to hear their explanation for that. So there's no state law requirement they be income restricted or reserved or low or very low income households. Okay. Still doesn't really impact the fact that $101 million is going to be spent on low income housing after the fire. You're still left with, why is this happening? What are we doing here? The governor has taken steps to make rebuilding easier, not harder. Okay. We've got 16,000 structures that burned down during the Palisades fire, and we've had 100 building permits issued. So if that's rebuilding easier, not harder, and rebuilding faster, not slower, that's not really working, right? Including suspending certain replacement mandates in the coastal zone to allow for faster recovery. These actions provide flexibility to local communities while ensuring California doesn't lose the affordable housing it already had. To be 100% clear, no laws have changed, no mandates exist. This grant, which developers can choose to apply for, doesn't change zoning laws or housing policy. This kind of misleading coverage only stokes unnecessary fear at a time when communities are trying to rebuild. So we're covering a story where $101 million going towards affordable housing, and that's stoking fear? What's the fear there? You're covering a story. What is the fear? Well, a whole bunch of low-income housing is coming to the Palisades. That's the fear. People are saying, hey, we want to build 15-minute cities. This kind of falls right into that whole deal, right? You got to have all kinds of affordable housing. And now we've got some of the most expensive areas in California receiving what are arguably going to be low or no barrier entry affordable housing. How's that going to work out? We're going to find out. Governor's office has urged the Center Square to correct their false story. Okay, whatever. Let's go to the story. Let's go right to the end. We always start at the beginning. Let's do it backwards. Let's eat dessert first, and let's go and see what they say. The story's been edited since initial publication to reflect that LA local ordinance was modeled on existing state law. It's also been edited to note that low-income requirement affects only the Pacific Palisades in its entirety, not the entire city of Los Angeles, and that the city's income thresholds are based on city, not county data. So that's what they came back with. Doesn't really change much of the story, does it? No. Let's take a look at the story. 6 months after the devastating Palisades fire in Eaton, gotta do this. I'll do this for you, because otherwise you can't read the damn thing. And what's the point? Right? There we go. Oof, better. 6 months after the devastating Palisades and Eaton fires, California Governor Gavin Newsom unveiled $101 million for multifamily low-income housing development that will contribute to a more equitable and resilient Los Angeles. Equitable. Okay. All right. Just giving a bunch of stuff to the poor people, right? The people who aren't necessarily needing it, but are getting it. People that are just getting handouts. All right. You got housing going to those folks. Okay. How many of these are drug addicts? How many of these are criminals? How many of these are people that have done jail time or prison time? Don't really know, but that's where your mind goes, right? And resilient Los Angeles. How does this make Los Angeles more resilient? Put a bunch of low-income housing, making a ghetto in the Palisades? Because that's what happens. Anytime you do low-income housing, that area becomes a ghetto. It just does. It just does. Priority is for geographic proximity to the fire perimeters of the Eaton, Hughes, and Palisades fires. That's where they're going to do it. Right? I mean, it comes off as odd. The priority is for a geographic. We want to build our low-income housing as deep into the fire perimeters that we possibly can. And now they're just basically stating, hey, this is where the fires happened. This money is towards that. We're going to do some low-income housing. But I think what people are looking at, and they're going, in the Palisades? You're going to do low-income housing in the Palisades? And then Newsom's going to go, well, we already had the low-income housing. It burned down. We're going to rebuild that. And somewhere in between, the whole message here is just going to be destroyed and lost. Earlier this year, Center Square broke news that a local Los Angeles ordinance modeled on current California state laws require fire-destroyed, rent-protected housing, which includes all apartments in the Pacific Palisades built before October 1978, to be replaced with low-income housing. Okay. So same for same, right? Or maybe because they weren't prior to October 1970, if they were built prior to October 1978 and they're not currently low-income housing, Center Square is saying, well, they're all going to be rebuilt as low-income housing. That's one of the points there. Because the affordability requirements use city-level income data, not more local incomes, definitions for low and very low-income housing reflect much lower incomes than the norm for the affluent Palisades community. Thousands of families from Pacific Palisades to Altadena to Malibu are still displaced. Yeah, where are that? The 16,000 structures and 100 building permits? Yeah, there's still a lot of people displaced, right? And we owe it to them to help. Well, how about hurry up and build some housing instead of talking about it, instead of money for this, money for that? How about you just get going? How about you help those who have the money ready to roll? Just boom, line that housing up. Let's get it built. Let's build it. This rebuild process in California is going to take forever. And we've said that from the get-go. This is going to take forever. The funding we're announcing today will accelerate the development of affordable multifamily rental housing so that those rebuilding their lives after this tragedy have access to a safe, affordable place to come home to. And what I think others would say is, you're taking real housing and you're substituting it with affordable housing and you're trying to make a ghetto out of the Palisades. Is that what you're doing? So you can have control of the Palisades. That storyline is out there. And I think that is what a ton of people are going to glom onto. $101 million for affordable housing in the Palisades? Why? That was my first question is, why? This isn't a cheap area. This is a wildly expensive area. But it has to do with what's already been there, what they want to have, got to have a certain percentage, yada, 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 yada. As a real estate guy, it's kind of one of those things where, I've worked on appraisals of so many big, development projects, and the developers, whenever they have the opportunity to not build, but to just cut a check for their portion of what they're supposed to contribute towards affordable housing, that's what they end up doing, because building affordable housing in big blue liberal cities, big blue liberal counties, big blue liberal states doesn't happen. Can't do it, because the two just, they don't really, affordable and in a big blue city doesn't happen. Somebody's got to subsidize it. It's taxpayers' dollars, right? You got to subsidize it because the numbers don't work. You got $1 million lot and you're going to build some affordable housing. How? What's that going to look like? Government's just going to have to take, taxpayer money and just subsidize the F out of it. I mean, that's the only way any of this stuff works. And then the ongoing continual subsidy of these low-income housing. The 2025 wildfires in LA County have intensified the region's long-standing housing crisis. It puts a focus on there's no housing for literally almost anybody. You've had a massive, massive supply issue, and this makes it worse. It's simple as that. Supply demand. And when you've got little supply and you've got high demand, where's your pricing go? Not down, goes up. And that's what you've seen in so many big blue urban cities, with the exception of ones who have lost big economic players in their community. Detroit would be an example of that. Even Detroit's coming back, though. The multifamily finance supernova Los Angeles disaster makes funds more accessible to support the development of safe, fire-resilient, multifamily, low-income housing that will provide long-term stability, protect vulnerable populations, and contribute to a more equitable and resilient Los Angeles. Just a bunch of nonsense. So they're going to put poor people in a community that's probably going to catch on fire again. And I laugh when I see safe and fire resilient multifamily income low-income housing, because it's in a fire zone and it's burned down once already. And the odds are extremely high. It'll happen again. It'll happen again. Oh, no, Sean, all the timber's been taken. All right, how about those big winds? Yeah, those winds. The grant includes multiple funding streams, including the multifamily housing program for low-income housing, taxpayer-funded supportive housing for those existing institutional settings or homelessness, transit-oriented development that boosts density near transit stops for income-restricted housing, and veteran and homeless veteran housing. It's possible to stack funding. Notice includes scoring preferences for projects that are closer to the fire burn radius, have government funding commitments, have an occupancy preference for wildfire victims, a partridge in a pear tree of restrictions, and are ready to start construction with 180 days of awarded funds. 180 days. So you got all your plans, you got all your cost estimates, you got everything ready to go. No, you don't have anything because you don't have the funding yet. What they're saying is, hey, projects that have this stuff ready to roll, they're going to be prioritized. To qualify as supportive housing, multifamily housing, supportive housing, multifamily housing. How many times do we need the word housing in there? A project must provide at least 40% of the units for homeless or individuals who have spent at least 15 days in jails, hospitals, prisons, and institutes of mental disease. Let's read that again. A project must provide at least 40% of its units for the homeless or individuals who have spent at least 15 days in jails, hospitals, prisons, and institutes of mental disease. But doesn't it make you just want to move right on in? Oh, who are my neighbors going to be? I mean, mostly good people. I mean, you've got some that, had some jail experience, not prison time. They just did a quick 6 months in their local jail. It was nothing big. Hospitals, they've been injured. They can't get around. They can't do whatever. They're recovering from whatever. Prisons, well, we got a longer term sentence there. And, Jimmy had to do a quick 5 years. But he needs housing now, so that's what we're doing. And institutes of mental disease. All right, so we're just going to put the insane into housing. One of my stories earlier today was about an individual in Portland, Oregon, who is crazy and decided at 5:53 in the morning after he got off an imaginary phone call with his girlfriend who he hadn't talked to in 2 years, he decided to pour some gasoline on his first floor apartment in Portland, Burnside, and then get in an argument, loud argument that people heard with his imaginary girlfriend or someone, we don't know, literally it says someone, and then he threw a Molotov cocktail into his apartment, igniting the gasoline from the front to the back that he had poured in there. He's a nut job or on drugs or a combination. We don't know. But again, that's the kind of individual that you get from jails, hospitals, prisons, and institutes of mental disease. A guy who lights his own apartment complex on fire with people sleeping in it on a Friday morning. That's what happens because he thought this was a good idea. He had a conversation in his head, maybe out loud. We're not really sure because he talks to himself a lot. And you notice that's a common element of the homeless. And then when they get hooked on drugs, just, wacky, nutty drugs, it gets worse, way worse. So, and then we go into projects gain additional points for being within a quarter-mile transit, 50 to 80% density bonus based on level of transit services, 15% of the units are set aside for very low or low-income households. So is the Palisades, is that becoming low income? A certain component of it is, but a lot of folks are going to say, well, there goes Los Angeles. There it goes. There it goes. Because the plans are in place for the takeover, and this is where that starts. Yeah, maybe. But you've always got this whole low income, thing to consider when you're doing reconstruction of areas. Anytime they rebuild or, new build, tear down, you got to have the affordable housing. Because in these big blue liberal cities, they don't allow for enough to be constructed, and their rent and mortgages, property values go through the roof. Because when you constrict supply as badly as Los Angeles has and continues to do so, 16,000 buildings, 12,000 homes of those homes, something like that. And you got 100 building permits. No wonder you've just taken a massive swath of housing out of the equation and you're not replacing it with anything new. And it's going to be a long time before you do. That's just not happening, right? So that's where this storyline kind of comes in and people are like, what is going on? A lot of you guys sent me this storyline. Thank you for all those that did. Because it's one of those things that we're kind of scared about. All right. Where's all low-income housing going to go? It's going to go somewhere. Where's it going? Palisades. Couldn't happen to a nicer neighborhood, right? Couldn't happen to a nicer neighborhood. Talk about not in my backyard. NIMBY. I'd rather not have a low-income project that allows for, jails, hospitals, prisons, or mental diseases, those afflicted with said such afflictions. So how about this one? California bill to let LA City buy fire-destroyed lots for low-income housing. This feeds right into that whole, all right, we're going to build low-income housing so they can take control of the city, and they're going to push everybody out. They're just going to have a bunch of nut jobs in there. This falls right in line with that, doesn't it? It really does. So California Senate passed a bill to allow LA County and other municipalities to use property taxes to fund resilient rebuilding authorities. And that's in quotes. That would have to use at least 40% of their funding for building low-income housing. Senate Bill 549 now is a hearing today, Wednesday. As a funding mechanism, the bill would allow the RRA, the Resilient Rebuilding Authorities for the Los Angeles wildfires, to issue, receive, and administer funds, including but not limited to tax increment financing, federal loans, bunch of other stuff. So you're going to be able to use the taxpayers' funds to oversee most of the construction process and would be granted the power to get this. Now, think about this. Granted the power to purchase lots at a fair price for land banking. They're just going to buy it and hold it. Okay. Why is LA land banking lots in the Palisades. Why are they doing? Well, because of low-income housing, Sean. Okay, these are $1 million lots, $2 million lots I've seen. Make that make sense, right? You're doing what for what? Purchase critical construction materials in bulk. Okay, you're basically just describing a real estate developer. That's what they do. Economies of scale for fair price for land banking. That's what a developer does. I'm going to build it and get the plans together. I'll hold it and then I'll build it. So you got land banking. Purchase critical construction materials in bulk. Okay, all right, that's just smart business. This isn't anything new. And support the reconstruction workforce by partnering with trades, facilitating training and workforce development, and creating temporary workforce housing. I'm sorry, but it sounds like you're talking about subs. You're a builder and you're talking about subcontractors. Partnering with trades, that's a sub. Facilitating training and workforce development. Well, workforce development, yes. Facilitating training for what? They already know their job. And if they don't, do you really want them building your substandard affordable housing? No. And creating temporary workforce housing. That is literally what a group of subs on a job site is. Temporary workforce housing. Been to a big construction site? You seen all the guys with hats on and, work gear? That's what they're doing. So, basically what you're recreating the wheel on how to build bulk housing, multifamily housing. That's what you're talking about. But you're putting it into a bunch of just nonsense mumbo jumbo. Oh, that sounds fancy. Oh, facilitating training and workforce development. Oh, that's good. Creating temporary workforce. Oh, we need that because we need to build units. That's how they get built anyway. There isn't just one guy out there building 20 apartment complexes in a group. Yeah, I framed up Unit 26 today by myself. No, doesn't happen. RRA-law would also facilitate reconstruction of lost rental housing stock, probably not, including by promoting of accessory dwelling units, senior serving housing, and replacement of affordable housing lost in the fires. Does anybody look at all this and just go, this is never gonna work out. It'll never work, right? How are they going to rebuild anything if they're perpetually in a housing deficit anyway? They're not. This just made the situation worse. And whatever policy California throws out there, it's going to suck. We know that because that is what California policy does. When's the last time we talked about a California policy that's being introduced that we're like, yeah, you know what? That really makes sense. That really hits the nail on the head. That is genius, 100% in support of it. When's the last time we did that? Never have. Why? Because most policy coming out of California that is, by the majority is just a head scratcher. I mean, look at a couple of the big projects that, California is doing, high-speed rail-wise. They've got a couple of just boondoggle projects, billions and billions and billions of dollars being spent with high-speed trains going to nowhere because they haven't been built. They're supposed to be completed a while ago, and they're like $100 billion over budget because that's how the building process in California goes. It just does. I mean, and to expect anything less for the Palisades. So that's where I think a lot of people are jumping in. Oh, okay. Well, Palisades are now ghetto. Won't be going there anymore. And is that going to shove out everybody else so that the government can quickly buy up those lots? I mean, that's the leap of faith, right? I hear that all the time. And the answer is no, I don't think so, because this is kind of common to the process of rebuilding. Okay, but we got to have XYZ percentage. Even when you are saying you're buying a lot over in Seattle and you're going to put 3 units on there, there's some component of your building permit where you're going to either have to build or you're going to cut a check towards the low-income housing fund. And builders always cut a check. They're always cutting a check because it's easier. Hey, let me build for profit what I want to do. And we'll do that whole ridiculous cap and trade, they do for carbon emissions. We'll do that with affordable housing. And that's what they do because it makes more sense. It just, who wants to, literally for profit, who wants to build affordable housing? Yeah, that's not most developers. It's not most builders' gig. It's just not. There are builders who specialize in that, and they do all that stuff where they partner with trades, facilitate training, workforce development, and create temporary workforce housing. They do that, otherwise known as building multifamily. Yeah. But this whole deal in California, it's on a slow train going to nowhere. Because that's how policy goes in a big blue state like California. Washington State, if we had a bunch of housing get destroyed by fire, same thing. It would just be an absolute cluster. Because most of the folks that are in office have never built a home. They don't understand the construction process, nor do they care. And the economics are such that it's going to take forever to get the stuff rebuilt. And so they're going to focus on, we got funding together for that, and we're going to require this, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. In the meantime, 100 construction permits. How's that process going? It's been what? How long has it been? 6 months? I think 6 months. Because Mayor Bass, she skipped out of going to the 6-month rah, hey, we're rebuilding party for the Palisades fire to go and bitch that ICE is deporting criminal illegal aliens. Build housing, interrupt law enforcement deporting criminal illegal aliens. Make that make sense. None of this stuff makes sense. And yet, in a way, it totally makes sense, doesn't it? All right. Let me know what your conspiracy theory is. Why is California 101 million low-income housing Palisades? What's the dealio there? You tell me what you think in the comments. All right. That's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. I'd love to have you subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.